start with the cool stuff. The NFL draft, Detroit Grand Prix, both coming in the next couple of months. What do those events mean to the city?
Well, Brett, first off, thank you for, being back with me, and it's always a delight to talk with you. I think the most incredible thing about those events, and it doesn't matter whether it's the draft or the Grand Prix or any of the other big events that, now are coming in, with much more regularity to the downtown. It is twofold. I think that the two most important things that we get out of those activities are: one, continued change of perception. So we get lots of new people that haven't experienced Detroit, or if they have experienced Detroit, it's been a long time. And they get here and they are blown away with not only what Detroit has become, but where it's headed. So I love the fact that these are huge opportunities to reintroduce people to what is a pretty remarkable and robust city. And then the second piece is they really are tremendous opportunities for our business community to engage, whether it's the small businesses and the economic impact that it represents, or just the general sort of community, both brick and mortar just sort of the pop-up kind of activities that occur around these. Tremendous opportunity to drive, revenue, and broader equity in our community.
What about economically? How do you think the city and the area will benefit economically?
Yeah, I mean, so last year we brought the Grand Prix downtown. We brought it back downtown. If you and I remember when it was Formula One first and then kart, but brought it back from Belle Isle to the streets of Detroit, and there was an over $75 million economic impact just from that 3-day, 2-day actually race, but Friday being the free day and then Saturday, Sunday being the actual qualifying and race days. So huge opportunity. Draft is going to see something that's even more significant. One, because it's 3 full days of heavy activity. It's 32 teams. We've got 8 cities that are within a drive distance of Detroit. So we're going to see a lot of people coming in, not only buying food and drinks, but also staying in our hotels, thinking about what they could, buy in our various shops, and just the overall economics. So my estimate, and we'll have a full report on the economic impact from the draft, but is, well in excess of $100 million. You can't a good benchmark for us and something to strive for was Nashville, and that was over $200 million of economic impact.
Wow, I didn't realize it was quite that high.
Yeah.
How has the process been getting ready for the draft? What are the kinds of things you've had to do to get ready?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I mean, now we're, under 60 days and an all-out sprint. The NFL is really interesting because they compartmentalize these very large events that they put on. So we sort of needed to wait to get past the Super Bowl before they turned 100% of their focus on Detroit. But their focus is now entirely on Detroit and the April draft. So the preparation has been really very similar, Brad, to what you find in a lot of what we do here in the city of Detroit. We all came together. So we've got a host committee with 8 different committees. Those committees range anywhere from operations to communications to marketing to infrastructure improvements, transportation, public safety. So we've got all of the various aspects of making sure that this is not only a safe, but also really enjoyable event underway through the local host committee and the committees that make that up. We also come together from the city, the Lions, the Visit Detroit Sports Commission and DDP, because it's our role, especially as it relates to the draft, to make sure that those things that are necessary to facilitate the NFL's needs, but also the community's needs, are in place. As you know, for us at the Downtown Detroit Partnership, the draft is taking place, directly in our public spaces. So it's been a great, backdrop to why we made the kind of investment we made 20 years ago in places like Campus Martius Park and the other parks that we are responsible for. And it also is, very indicative of the fact that the Lions, one of the original franchises, have a very strong voice as it relates to where the NFL thinks they should be doing things. First, it was the 2006 Super Bowl, and now it's the 2024 draft, and we couldn't have been there without the Lions.
Do you think the season they just finished is the success that they had this year? You think that's going to heighten things? Do you think it's going to make a difference at all?
Oh, I think it's going to be crazy. I was for a moment, I might have been a little optimistic, but for a moment I was thinking we were going to do a Kansas City repeat and have, the winning Super Bowl team hosting the draft. But we were close. And yes, Brad, this is going to be the level of excitement, the level of just one pride energy that is in this city is absolutely remarkable. And coming off that kind of season, really looking at the way that not only the ownership, from Sheila Hampford to now the coach Campbell and it is going to only make this much more exciting. The region and the state is going to show up, and I'm pretty sure most every Lions fan, even those that don't have season tickets, are going to be down here.
You mentioned Kansas City. I'm sure safety has been at the top of your concerns since you started setting the whole draft thing up. Did what happened in Kansas City with the chaos and the tragedy there, did it affect any of your planning? Does it concern you at all that similar things might happen here?
So safety is always top of mind for anything that we do. And, we submitted this bid over 6 years ago. For the last 2 years, we've been in really, strong planning mode, including our public safety partners. The Detroit Police Department and Chief White have been incredible, not only proactive in putting together a very comprehensive plan, but then adjusting to that plan as new things come up, and as horrific events like what happened in Kansas City take place. They don't change our plans because our plans are well in place and well thought out. But we learn from that, and we make adjustments if there are adjustments that seem to make sense and are necessary. When that happened in Kansas City, the first call I got was from Chief White, and the first thing he said to me on that call was, let's get a joint statement out to the public. This is going to be now even more top of mind, not only for the average fan, but for families. And let's make sure that people understand, and they're hearing from us that Detroit takes this stuff seriously, that we're prepared, that we've had a plan. We're going to continue to adjust that plan. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that this is not only a really fun and exciting event, but a very safe event. So, Brad, I think that there are a number of steps that that we, along with the city, have invested in. We've invested in advanced technology through our camera coverage and our real-time crime center. We've invested in magnetometers that are placed at these key entrances at events to create gun-free zones. So there's a lot of various things that some of which you see, and some of which you don't see and don't even know is in the crowd, that has been very successful and will continue to be.
Yeah. Talk about your group a little bit, the Downtown Detroit Partnership, its value and impact on the city. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's always hard for me to talk about, the value and impact we've had because, one of the unique things that the Downtown Detroit Partnership has done for over 100 years is just sort of be that steady steward of the core of our city. Our focus is really the downtown, the 1.1 square mile of real estate in the downtown. We've watched it go from a central business district to what now I like to call a central connectivity district, because, so much of what the Downtown Detroit Partnership is focused on is helping make that transition that we saw coming out of the pandemic to be a little less office dominant and much more 24/7 residential, hospitality, and office mixed. And I think all of that is really healthy. I mean, we tend to fill voids when there is a void within either the private sector or the public sectors when needed. We tend to leverage and augment good efforts and ideas, and we incubate a lot of the new opportunities in Detroit. A good example is M1 Rail. The Q line was incubated in the downtown Detroit partnership. Mogo Bike Share, it is part of our core mission and is a service that we provide. The Build Institute, which was teaching young entrepreneurs, mostly Detroit based, the skills that they needed to start a business, that was started and incubated here at the Downtown Detroit Partnership. So lots of different things that we do in order to not only lift up, good innovation, but also make sure that there is a resilient, stable platform within our city. The downtown, Brad, makes up, over 45% of the tax base for the general fund of the city. That's very important to the services that the city is able to provide to all citizens. And so making sure that, we've got reliable, trusted, governance is a big part of what we do. And then last, 10 years ago, we were successful in founding the first business improvement zone in the downtown. We just renewed it for another 10 years unanimously. And that was born out of a clean downtown initiative that Roger Penske started as our chair. And we've only continued to grow that.
Talk about that a little bit. What Biz does for the city.
Yeah,
And
so
for
the
you.
Biz is an entirely separate quasi-governmental agency that we manage through the Downtown Detroit Partnership. The property owners have voted to impose a tax on the properties in the downtown that allows us to not only employ a number of ambassadors that are out on the street 24/7, cleaning and guiding various people, but they also do more than that. There are over, in the last 10 years, over 4,500 individual assists. So this could be somebody that just needs a direction or is lost. We also deploy a lot of infrastructure resources. So we have a trash truck, we have pickup trucks, we have, power washers. So the whole idea is to make sure that the downtown is clean and safe. We do not, replace the city services, the services that the city is obligated under its charter to provide the community. What we do is we augment. And quite frankly, it's that augmentation that allows us to lift up a little bit of what the delivery is and the overall quality. And most importantly, to create that consistency that people can rely on when they're making the important decisions, whether it's an investment decision, whether it's a decision to move your employees downtown, or just, the way that you're continuing to support the business that you're operating within the city.
What is something that people might not know that might surprise them about the Downtown Detroit Partnership?
I think the thing that probably would surprise people the most about the Downtown Detroit Partnership is the fact that on the surface, it looks like we're an organization that is guided by the C-suite leadership of the corporate, philanthropic, and public sectors. But the reality is we have a much deeper membership base. That membership is made up of, very, very small, all the way down to individuals, all the way up to, mid and large scale businesses. And so I think what often is surprising is the way that the partnership can be really truly a balanced advocate and voice for the community as a whole. Often an organization like ours is sort of automatically assumed that it's, very big business focused. And the Downtown Detroit Partnership has been remarkably adept at really understanding and listening to and advocating for all the voices. A great example of that is happening right now with I-375 and the fact that the state, who has a responsibility to maintain our major road infrastructure, has been planning to redo and boulevard I-375. Well, the Downtown Detroit Partnership, through a grant from the Kresge Foundation, is dove into that, really understanding what all the perspectives are, not just, the perspectives of those that are on, the corridor, but also those that are not. And we're able to, with our partners at MDOT and the city, really make sure that we're getting great urban design. It's innovative, it's future looking, forward facing, and is not repeating some of the challenges of the past. I mean, 60 years ago, we had a disastrous result from that highway. And so let's make sure we're designing something that's better than that.
Yeah. You just had your annual meeting, talked about your annual report. Talk about some of the good news that was in it.
Yeah, so we just had our annual meeting and released our 2023 really, because it's a look back at 2023
Right.
and a bit of a look forward into what we're focused on in 2024 annual report. And some of the things I think that are most interesting coming out of that reporting, is the data points that we track. We have on our website, downtowndetroit.org, we have a datascape. We are updating the data points on a daily basis in real time. And some of the things that were most remarkable are the recovery that we've seen. We are back to almost pre-pandemic levels of visitors in the downtown. So, close to 34 million visitors in the downtown on an annual basis. We're actually exceeding the record numbers of visitors in the parks. So on our way to over 3 million visitors in the parks, which is a new high water mark. We also are seeing, huge increases in the hotel, not only occupancies, but the average daily room rates, which is, a good indication that, people are coming from outside of the region. We also have just now started tracking where people are coming from. And I think that's going to be really telling when we have, events like the draft and the Grand Prix. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we're understanding how much that's increasing. And then last, I think the most remarkable thing that we have identified in some of our independent surveying of people coming into and living in the city is the perception of downtown has increased. Over 94% of the people that are in the downtown for one reason or another find the downtown highly desirable, and that's a very strong positive perception. So a number of different things that we track. We track obviously the return to office, which, like most major cities, is still trailing some of the other leading indicators. But all in all, I'm really encouraged. And then last, I would just mention that in our fall development report, which then is recapped in our annual meeting report, the investment in deal flow is still very strong. We had a 200% increase in pipeline projects that represents $2.8 billion of investment in the downtown. So people still are finding Detroit a good place to invest, and the downtown a place to do business.
Were there indications in the report of things that need to be worked on? You mentioned number of workers still is pretty well below pre-pandemic levels. Is it important to pick that number up in order to drive kind of more retail kind of business during the
Yeah,
day?
yeah, there are, and again, one of the neat things about data is it doesn't lie. And so we use it just as much for promoting the good as we do really focusing on some of the areas that we need to continue to lift up. And so the two areas that are most sort of telling is the return to work numbers. And we need to continue to find ways to encourage employers to, to bring their workers back into the office. We know that it's not going to be, a 9 to 5, 5 days a week kind of environment anymore, but we do think that it's important for, consistency. It's important for the businesses. They don't know whether they've got enough traffic to open for lunch or not. And so we need to make sure that there's that stability, and we're doing some things to encourage that. We started this Spirit card, which is a prepaid digital card that you can give out to your employees to encourage them to come down as an incentive to have lunch on, once a week, once a month, whatever you decide you want to do the incentive program around. It can be used for a lot of other things. It can be used for anniversaries or gifts, but we really do want to encourage employers to continue to find reasons to bring their teams together and have some consistency so we can plan our economy around that. And then the second piece is really making sure that the the overall tax base continues to grow, because as I said, about 45% of the general fund is driven from the tax base that's generated from the city, the downtown. That those taxes are partly employee taxes, they're gaming taxes, they're made up of a lot of different things, property taxes. But we need to make sure there's, continued growth, that whether it's the population, residential population that's living in the downtown, or the investments that are being made. We're continuing to work on that, because that also took a hit, and we're continuing, we're still recovering from that. We had a lot of, Brad, you've reported on this. We've had a lot of artificial money in the system from, the COVID relief funds. We don't have that, and we aren't going to have that in the future. And so for us, the challenging areas that we're focused on is growing the economy, growing the residential market, because that's a 24/7 activity that's really important, and just making sure that we've got a really diverse economy.
You've mentioned parks a couple of times. Campus Martius was just named the #1 public square in the country by USA Today. The annual report mentions success of the parks. You think the city's parks get the recognition they deserve? Do they get the credit they deserve?
I think they're getting the credit they deserve. I mean, so for the riverfront and for, Campus Martius to be recognized nationally now 3 years in a row, have every indication. And, with your readers voting, often we'll get it, for a 4th year in a row. But I think they're starting to get the recognition they deserve. They are some of the most beautiful public spaces in the country. They represent a real commitment from our community to reclaim some of its most treasured assets. I mean, the riverfront is a great example, where you went from cement silos to, public parks and walkways, on our most treasured natural resource, which is the Detroit River. So I think they are starting to get that recognition. I also think that the Detroit as a whole, partly because of these public spaces, the nature of the programming. I mean, in our 7 parks, we do over 2,000 mostly free events a year. And that doesn't include all the sort of private kinds of functions that take place in these public spaces. Doesn't include the hundreds of, marriage proposals and anniversary celebrations and all that. So they do play a really unique role in not only how the community has access to that kind of space, but also, how the city is perceived. Condé Nast, is voted Detroit top 100 place in 2024 to visit. Time Magazine, voted us again one of the places to visit in 2024. So we are seeing that. I think the other thing is in the last 2 years, those of us that are in the public space business came together under the Parks Coalition. That's a really unique body to take and harness all of our good thoughts and work, and instead of duplicating efforts, actually learn from each other and share in, not only resources, but also ideas. So Detroit has made an investment. It started with the current administration and the investments they've made in not only the neighborhood parks, but also the greenways, and it's only grown.
Yeah. Talk about you a little bit. You have a long history of supporting Detroit with your involvement. You've been at the DDP a long time. You're on a bunch of other boards and organizations and such. Why is that kind of support so important to you to display?
Well, it's interesting, actually, at our annual meeting last week, Mike Tirico moderated a really neat conversation about legacy and leadership with
He did.
Roger Penske and Dan Lepp. And Mike Tirico mentioned that, he wasn't originally a Michigander or a Detroiter. He, grew up in New York, and his wife was born and raised here. And, and so, his state-in-law, as he put it, became Michigan. Well, Similar thing for me. I wasn't born and raised here. I was born on the East Coast and grew up on the East Coast. And my wife was born and raised here in Detroit, actually Rosedale Park, went to St. Scholastica and the whole bit. And when we got married, there was no place I was going to be but Detroit, and I'm glad for it. Almost 40 years later. So this is home. And I think the reason that, commitment and community and serving our community and giving back is so important to me is I had two parents that not only lived it but ingrained it in my moral fabric. I had a mom who was a Presbyterian minister and a father who was very committed to not only the business industry but also the community. And so they very early taught me that it was not right to give back. It was an obligation, and I've continued to follow that. And I've loved it. I mean, it's interesting, Brett. I started my career in real estate. I started my career with a multinational based in Houston, Texas, and ended up here in Detroit. And what was most unique about Detroit, having spent time in New York and Houston and Chicago and Dallas, a lot of big markets, was I could really make a difference. I could get involved in a way that was very different in Detroit than you can get involved in a lot of the other markets. I could make a difference in Detroit that, quite frankly, I probably wouldn't have been able to as significantly in some of those other markets. And so for me, this has become as much part of, my being as it has been a passion. And I've gotten much more out of the service and the people that I've been around than I've given. But I sure as heck am having a lot of fun giving.
Um, are you doing what you always wanted to do? Growing up, did you want to be a fireman, a doctor, a superhero? Where are you
Uh,
in your life's path right now compared to where you thought it might be?
So there are three things that I wanted to be that, I don't have any regrets in my life, but those three things, not doing those, are a little bit of a regret to the extent I have one. One was I I am still at heart and want to be a cowboy. I grew up, on my grandparents' farm and, rode a lot of horses and all that kind of stuff. So I really wish I had been a cowboy. And then, service again, whether it was military or police, or both, never did that, but definitely thought of a lot about it growing up and pretending, with my little GI Joe soldiers, parachuting them off the rooftop. But no, I am doing what I always wanted to do. Obviously, real estate has been a big part of my professional career, but even in the real estate work that I've done, it always had some tie to the giving back, the bigger, sort of the bigger opportunity, bigger mission. I developed the corner, the old Tiger Stadium ballpark, and into a mixed use development. And a big part of the reason that was so exciting for me was we were preserving the original ballpark. So it was PAL, the Police Athletic League, was doing the ballpark, and I was doing the residential and retail that surrounded it, and it was the best of both worlds. So always have tried to go the path a little less traveled, and especially do things that are a little more complicated, a little more innovative, and ultimately, hopefully, a little more lasting.
Where was the farm that you wanted?
Farm was in Deep Haven, Minnesota. Us Larsons, us Swedes, we kind of landed in a lot of us landed in Minnesota, and so it was out by Lake Minnetonka in Deep Haven, and it was actually Deep Haven Farm. It's now been subdivided. I go back every couple years to see if the stone entrance gate was still there, but yeah, it was great, and we had chicken coops and goats and cows and horses, and one winter I got lost in the garden that was probably 20 feet outside the front door, but the snow drifts were so high, and I was so small I couldn't see the front door.
All right, sir. That's what I needed. I really appreciate you giving us some time. Again, this story is going to appear. It's our executive conversation feature. It'll be in our March, April magazine. So
Okay. I I can't thank you
I'll
enough.
make sure you get a link to it.
Okay, we'll get it out too, but I can't thank you enough. And it's really was fun to see you last Thursday, and anything you need,
It was a great meeting. I love listening to Tarico.
Yeah,
That
he's
was great stuff.
he's a pro, but
All
it's great. So anything you need, please don't ever
right.
hesitate. Okay.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. Take care.
You have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.